I brought something for you. Here it is. I watched closely as Jason handed a cake box to my mother. Jason's forced smile made me feel a bit uneasy. I quietly took the cake box from him. After slightly opening the box and confirming its contents, I threw it into the trash. Hey! What do you think you're doing? Jason and my mother simultaneously looked at me and expressed their anger at what had happened in front of them. What I did? I asked my mother, amazed. Did you see what was inside the cake? My mother began to tremble at the unexpected question, as if she didn't think it was possible. I glared at Jason to confirm if my suspicions were correct. Jason looked frustrated and upset. Just as I thought. I clenched my fist, ready to get back at Jason for what he had done. My name's Jessica Smith. I'm 36 and I work as a caregiver. Work is busy every day, and by the time I get home at night after leaving early in the morning, I'm completely worn out. I knew the job would be physically demanding, but since getting married to Jason a year ago, we hardly see each other. Jason, on his end, works as a long-haul truck driver with irregular hours, adding to our difficulties in finding quality time together. Anyhow, we know we need to address our marital issues soon, but with both of us buried in our jobs, it's been hard to communicate. Our initial meeting was through a mutual friend. I've always been shy when it comes to love. After becoming a caregiver, I often declined invitations to social events after work. I wasn't the type to actively seek out a relationship, and after a long day at work, I just couldn't muster the energy to go out. Most of my peers were desperately looking for partners as they approached the marriageable age. Even if they were tired from work, they'd make the effort to find a romantic partner. While watching my friends passionately tackle their challenges, I, who had been nonchalantly avoiding relationships, suddenly started feeling the pressure after turning 30. Especially as everyone around me began getting married or having children. I can't go on like this. Even if I'm shy when it comes to love, I had always wanted to marry someday. So, I reached out to a friend who once invited me to a singles party, and she introduced me to a man of my age. That was my husband, Jason. Jason was 2 years older than me. He was always calm and composed, so I could sense the maturity that came with his age. What I needed wasn't a fiery romance, but a stable, quiet marital life. I liked him right away. Our interests aligned, and things moved quickly. We started dating and tied the knot a year ago. We began our marital life living with my mother. Without a father, I felt bad about leaving my mother alone after getting married. I thought Jason might object to living with my mother, but he was surprisingly okay with it. Though it took some time, I was able to get married and now live together with my mother. Everything seemed to fall into place and I was at ease, but from there, unexpected developments awaited. Something I couldn't have predicted just after our marriage. Right after Jason and I got married, there was an incident at my workplace. Several employees quit in succession. The reasons people gave for quitting varied widely. Some left to get married, while others wanted a change in career. While they probably didn't consult each other and quit all at once, the end result was that those left behind had to take on twice the amount of work as before. So, I started coming home later than ever before, and our lives became even more out of sync. So, when I left work on time for the first time in a while and sat down at the dinner table with Jason and my mother, I noticed the atmosphere in the house was incredibly tense. Hey, did you take care of that thing we talked about the other day? What thing? You forgot? I told you to open an account at M-Bank. Right. I forgot, my apologies. How could you? I told you countless times. It's really thoughtless of you to forget. My mother looked amazed at Jason, sighing heavily. There seemed to be some exchange between them that I wasn't aware of, but Jason had forgotten something my mother had asked him to do. What do you mean by bank? Well, you know, Jessica, you have an account with M-Bank, right? We never know what the future holds, and I think it would be wise for Jason to have one too, but he just won't listen. I'm really sorry, I truly just forgot. Oh, really? Well, if that's the case, it's fine. Indeed, I have an account with M-Bank. My mother deposits a small amount into that account every month, thinking of the unforeseen future. Probably, she plans to save for Jason as well. But Jason doesn't seem to get that she's trying to save for him, he just hears it as a demand to open an account. My mother has a bit of a bad habit. She speaks in a curt way, which can come off as cold. Because Jason doesn't get her real intentions, their conversations often miss the mark. That being said, I myself haven't been able to talk properly with my mother lately, so I've often had fights with her. Come on, Jason is busy too. No need to be so hard on him. You always say things so carelessly, not understanding the gravity of what I'm trying to convey. Not only is her tone sharp, but my mother also gets emotional quickly. So at that time too, it seemed that she was angry because her daughter didn't appreciate her kindness. That night in our bedroom, Jason said to me, "Your mom always seems to be nagging me. She gives me these confusing commands. Every day, until you get home, she's like a broken record telling me to get insurance, invest my money, and all that jazz. I'm exhausted from work and I just can't deal with her anymore." My mom had a time in the past when she didn't have money, and she's just worried. Instead of saying that, please just listen to her a bit. Knowing my mother's concerns, I tried to pacify the complaining Jason. On the surface, Jason seems to get along with my mother, but deep down he seemed to resent her. I get where he's coming from. I understand how annoying it can be to have someone go on and on about something you're not interested in, and even more so, how tiring it is to be constantly told what to do. But my mother just wants to ensure that Jason and I won't face financial hardships in the future. I can't stand it anymore. I'll deal with insurance and investments when I feel like it. As for the M-Bank account, it's obvious she'll only use it for her deposits or investments. Nowadays, you can't have multiple accounts at the same bank. M-Bank is the closest to our house and she just wants an account, it's as clear as day. Normally calm, Jason becomes very emotional about my mother. Being able to empathize with both my mother's feelings and Jason's frustrations, I simply nodded to Jason's story, letting out a sigh, wondering if there wasn't some way to resolve things. It might be better if we lived separately. That way, we wouldn't have to deal with her constant nagging. Hey! Jason knows I don't want to leave my mother alone. Making such a spiteful remark seemed rather mean-spirited to me. I'm just kidding. I'm gonna do whatever she asks. Whether it's an account or whatever, I should just set it up for her, right? He finally commented in a resigned tone, lying down on the bed in a huff. I didn't have any more to add, feeling uneasy. I just closed my eyes and lay down like Jason. So, after living together, it had been almost a year since the three of us had started living together and our feelings had remained at odds with each other. I feared that our days of discomfort would just continue, but an unexpected incident occurred. Cancer! Yes, it's really frustrating to find out about this at my age. One day, when I returned home a bit earlier than usual, my mother nonchalantly told me she'd been diagnosed with cancer. Jason hadn't returned yet, and it seemed like a good time for her to break the news. Oh no! Is it serious? How advanced is it? It doesn't seem too serious yet, but I'm gonna have surgery soon and will probably be hospitalized for a bit. Can you handle the housework? My mother, more concerned about whether I can do the housework than her own surgery, leaves me wondering if she's being kind or just interfering. Either way, her concern over something so trivial irritated me, somehow. Of course I can manage. How old do you think I am? What's with you? I'm really worried about you. You're crabby. I get it without you saying it every time. I can handle the housework, you just focus on getting better. I don't even know why I'm getting so worked up, but the fact that my mother has cancer seems to have hit me harder than I thought. I just can't be honest with my feeling, and I found myself frustrated again at not being able to offer my mother any comforting words. All right, I get it. Jason would listen without any fuss. My mother doesn't know what Jason really thinks about her behind her back. So, seeing Jason nod on the surface in agreement to her requests, which almost sound like orders, she probably believes that Jason is on her side. While she scolds Jason in a stern tone at times, she doesn't seem to be genuinely mad at him. In reality, Jason always begrudgingly listens to my mother, and he's never seriously paid attention to what she says. I want to tell that to her, but given my current standing, I can't say anything to my mother. Even though I'm truly on my mother's side, not Jason, all I could do was murmur it in my heart. Afterwards, my mother informed Jason that she has cancer and needs surgery. I don't know how Jason reacted, but seeing the peaceful look on my mother's face before she slept, I could tell she was comforted just the right amount. However, as expected, Jason seemed deeply disturbed upon hearing about my mother's illness.
How bad is your mother's illness?
I'm not sure. All she told me was that it wasn't that bad.
Is that so?
Jason didn't seem convinced at all, and showed a cryptic reaction. With my heart in turmoil, I tried to calm down as I headed to bed. That was the end of our conversation for the day, and Jason and I went to sleep amidst the chilling silence. From that day, even more so than before, I continued living a life without crossing paths with Jason at all. It seems that my mother and Jason rarely see each other. In that case, when on earth does Jason come home? I usually go to bed before Jason returned and start my day either before he wakes up or after he has left. This is exactly what it feels like to live separately within the same house. I was starting to suspect Jason, having no idea what he was thinking. While I continued living a life without crossing paths with Jason, the day of my mother's surgery finally arrived.
I wonder if Jason will come.
My mother sighed in her hospital room before entering the operating room.
Even though Jason won't come, I'm here.
Jason. There's no need to prioritize a son-in-law over one's own daughter, especially at a time like this. Having such bitter thoughts, I wonder if I'm a narrow-minded daughter. I kept my surprise hidden and simply cheered my mother on as she headed to the operating room. You got this. The surgery ended roughly 6 hours later. During that time, Jason never showed up. Of course, I had informed him, and he should have known today was the day of my mother's surgery. I just had to assume he was busy with work. The surgery was successful, and the cancer cells in my mother were temporarily removed. She would need to stay hospitalized for a while, but I sincerely hoped she would fully recover. When my mother woke up from the anesthesia, she seemed distracted ever since she was briefed by the doctor. Of course, she was happy about the successful surgery, but she couldn't help but wonder when Jason would come to visit.
Don't worry so much. He'll come eventually.
Maybe Jason's fed up with me. Oh dear. My mother, who's emotionally volatile, upon realizing that Jason's taking forever to show up, can't help but doubt that she might be disliked. While her suspicions aren't entirely wrong, she still believes that Jason is on her side, so she probably feels betrayed. While comforting my agitated mother, I listened to her complaints throughout her hospital stay with a heavy heart. A week after the surgery, Jason finally came to visit. It just so happened that I was visiting after work, and I could see my mother's face light up when Jason arrived.
Hey, how are you feeling? I thought you'd never come, Jason.
My mother's tone made it sound like she had been waiting for a lover, which embarrassed me.
I brought something for you. Here it is.
I watched closely as Jason handed a cake box to my mother. Jason's forced smile made me feel a bit uneasy. I quietly took the cake box from him. After slightly opening the box and confirming its contents, I threw it into the trash.
Hey! What do you think you're doing?
Jason and my mother simultaneously looked at me and expressed their anger at what had happened in front of them.
What I did?
I asked my mother, amazed.
Did you see what was inside the cake?
My mother began to tremble at the unexpected question, as if she didn't think it was possible. I glared at Jason to confirm if my suspicions were correct. Jason looked frustrated and upset. Just as I thought. I clenched my fist, ready to get back at Jason for what he had done.
What the hell, Jessica? Throwing away the gift I specifically bought.
Jason immediately adopted an aggressive stance, as if to argue that what he'd done was right.
What do you mean? You should know better than anyone else, shouldn't you?
I wasn't about to let Jason have the last word. For a long time, Jason and I had been living past each other, and confronting him directly like this was somewhat intimidating. But I couldn't let my mother suffer because of Jason's malice. That was the one thing I absolutely needed to prevent.
What are you talking about? Hey, try the cake. It's delicious.
Jason retrieved the cake box from the trash and pulled out the contents. It looked like a standard cream cake. But I recognized instantly. The cake wasn't from a bakery. As evidence, the cream was unevenly spread, and the strawberries on top looked somewhat pale and damaged. Yet, my mother didn't seem to notice such details, and she gazed at the cake, asking, "Huh?
Hold on, let me try it first."
I swiftly grabbed the cake from between Jason and my mother, who were close to each other, and took a bite from the edge. I really didn't want to, but there was no other choice. This was the only way to prove Jason's wrongdoing. After taking a bite at the cake, I immediately sensed something was off. First, it was incredibly salty. So salty and bad that I felt like throwing up. There was also an overpowering smell of alcohol, far more than what would normally be in such a dessert. I spit the cake into a tissue that was in the hospital room. Seeing my reaction, I could tell my mother's expression stiffened.
This is unbelievable. What's with this taste? Loads of salt and alcohol. Aren't these the very things a cancer patient shouldn't consume?
Even for healthy individuals, consuming too much salt and alcohol is toxic. For cancer patients, it further increases the risk of the disease. The idea that he intentionally wanted to feed this to my mother was horrifying. As Jason didn't anticipate I'd taste the cake, I could see him go pale.
You knew Mom's cancer treatment caused taste disturbances. So, you brought this. What's your aim?
It's not uncommon for cancer patients to have taste disturbances from treatments. I remember my mother telling me recently, I can't taste the food. Given her surgery, it should improve. But if Jason was aware of my mother's taste issues, it's not surprising he thought of the alcoholic cake. My mother looked at Jason with sheer terror. She seemed to have finally realized that he wasn't on her side. And as for Jason, he finally abandoned the facade of goodwill, lifted the corner of his eye and spoke with a defiant expression.
The goal? It's obvious. To hasten this old hag's disease and cash in on the insurance money.
Jason let out a loud, almost hysterical laugh. He's insane. He bragged about doing it for the insurance money, and tried to harm my mother. To know he had such intentions and would brazenly admit to them was horrifying. A chill ran down my spine.
Huh? Do you even realize what you were trying to do? That's a crime, you know. I know, and I don't care if I become a criminal. I just want to get rid of this old hag as soon as possible.
It's clear that when Jason scornfully referred to my mother as an old hag and tried to make her eat the poisoned cake, the image of Jason inside my mother's mind completely crumbled. That's how much my mother had a look of despair on her face.
You're always nagging me, telling me to do this and that, and you get mad when I don't obey. My life isn't just for you, old hag. Don't order me around. It makes me sick.
Jason vents the pent-up frustrations he's felt up until now at my mother. My mother looked at Jason with shocked eyes.
I just didn't want you to struggle with money, Jason. I don't care about that. I decide for myself. Don't interfere in my life every single time. Damn it, you ruined my plan. What are you gonna do, Jessica?
Jason glared at me while stamping his foot angrily. I held my head up high, trying not to be cowed by his snake-like eyes. In the corner of my vision, I could see my mother's frail body, crushed by despair. Wait for me, Mom. I'll drive this guy away.
Sorry to break it to you, but instead of getting insurance money, you're the one who's gonna have to pay alimony. Huh? What the hell are you talking about?
Jason laughed scornfully. He still hasn't realized. There's no way I'd confront you like this without any ammunition. I took out a large envelope from my bag and scattered its contents at Jason's feet. Seeing the contents of the envelope, the color drained from Jason's face in an instant. Looks like he recognized them. That makes things easier.
These were investigated by a private investigator. I suspected you might be cheating. To my surprise, so much evidence came out so quickly. How's it going with your mistress?
What I had laid out in front of Jason were numerous evidences of his affair brought by the investigator. Most of the photos are of him with his mistress. I didn't really want to look directly at the photos, but seeing Jason in them, leering and intertwining his arm with that woman's, fueled my determination.
How's it going? What the hell are you talking about? This is so unfair.
Realizing he could no longer make excuses with such evidence presented to him, Jason didn't try to dodge the blame. Instead, he lashed out, trying to paint me as the villain. But to me, it just sounded like the whining of a loser. No matter how much Jason shouted, I wasn't scared at all.
Unfair? Who's being unfair? Sneaking around cheating on me while pretending to be busy, and then trying to do something terrible to my mom? Unbelievable. I thought you were busy with work, but you were actually busy cheating, weren't you? I feel so stupid for feeling down because we were living separate lives.
Reflecting on my life up until now, tears naturally welled up in my eyes. I got married later than everyone else around me, but I was so happy when I married Jason. It saddened me that Jason would speak ill of my mother and that we could no longer hold a conversation together. My pent-up sadness and frustration that I couldn't vent to anyone suddenly exploded. Yet, even seeing me like that, Jason just sneered at me.
I don't care about that. I was planning to live happily with Emma after getting a ton of insurance money. But you ruined it, you damn woman.
Ignoring my feelings entirely, Jason continued to spew insults. Emma must be the name of his mistress. Doing my best to suppress my trembling body, I tried to retort to Jason. But before I could, my mother spoke up.
I've been listening, and Jason, you're unbelievable. Not only for what you tried to do to me, but how can you speak to Jessica like that? It's because of you and your daughter that I've never been happy in my married life. It's your fault.
Jason wasn't the calm and cool guy I once thought he was anymore. Distorted with ugliness, his desire to get away from me and my mother was painfully clear. My mother seemed to have finally lost her patience with Jason's incessant ranting.
Excuse me? Our fault? Do you have any idea how much we've considered you in our lives? I've been saving money for you every month. Jessica, even when she was super busy, has been juggling work and housework. And yet you trample on our efforts like this? It's unbelievable.
I could see the fire in my mother's eyes. Startled by her intensity, Jason took a step back.
Shut up! I never asked for any of that.
Jason tried to fight back against my mother, but it seemed to have no effect on her.
Shut up! Apologize to Jessica. And never come back home. Jessica can be happy without a jerk like you.
Hearing my mother shout, Jason finally fled the scene. The evidence of his infidelity remained scattered on the floor. I looked at my mother's face. Breathing heavily, my mother embodied the very image of a noble mother protecting her precious daughter.
Mom, thank you. That guy's unbelievable. Jessica, find a better man. You deserve more happiness.
I had thought my mother didn't care about me at all. But she stood up for me. She truly cared for me. Realizing that alone brought tears to my eyes, and I sobbed uncontrollably in her chest. She gently stroked my back. After that, on my way back from the hospital, I stopped by a lawyer's office and decided to proceed with the divorce process. When I got home, I immediately contacted Jason to let him know that I would be proceeding with the divorce process through a lawyer. Jason seemed to have talked to my lawyer. And just like that, our divorce was finalized smoothly. After that, Jason moved out. He's probably living with that so-called Emma. But I doubt they'll ever find true happiness. Through my lawyer, I intend to seek damages from Jason for trying to feed my mother a poisoned cake. Knowing Jason, who was hoping to rely on my mother's life insurance, he's probably tight on money now. Well, it's no longer my problem. Of course, I haven't given Jason the money that my mother had saved up for him. If nothing had happened, he wouldn't have had to worry about money. I hope he struggles. As for me, after my mother was discharged from the hospital, we started our life together. I moved to a workplace with shorter working hours so I could spend more time with my mother. I plan to enjoy life just with my mother for a while. I haven't yet given back to her. But now, I'm able to talk much more openly with my mother than before, and I'm truly happy now.